there's two big reasons why this is a problem. One of them is Deuteronomy 23, verse 2. It says, "The illegitimate child shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation, he shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord." So the illegitimate or bastard child can't come into the congregation of Israel for 10 generations. So what does that mean? Well, the reason that's important is God divorced Israel. So every subsequent generation was fatherless. God was no longer their father. They were illegitimate children. So 10 generations, they're banned. Now this becomes very neat if you track this out. You see, Psalms tells us that a generation is 70 years. 80 with strength, but it's generally going by 70 years. So 70 years is a generation. 10 generations is 700 years. So when God divorces the northern kingdom, that generation had God as their father, no longer their husband, but he was their father. So you have to wait for that generation to pass. That takes 70 years. So now that 70 years has passed, every child born is an illegitimate child for 10 generations. So they can't come into the congregation of the Lord. That would be another 700 years. So in total, you have 770 years that the scripture of Deuteronomy bans the house of Israel from coming to the Lord. So if you look in Wikipedia, it says that in 740 BC is when Assyria began to come against the northern kingdom. That's important because it tells us that's probably when God divorced the house of Israel, because then they weren't under his protection. So Assyria begins to come against them. Now, they didn't fully take them captive yet, but that's when they begin to come against them in 740 BC. Okay, so since we can figure God divorced Israel in 740 BC, and we need to get to 770 years. Well, 740 BC is going to bring us right up to the time of the New Testament. So we've just counted for 740 years. So now we need 30 more years. That's going to bring us to the year 30 AD. So did anything happen in the year 30 AD? Well, you probably remembered because we just covered that. Something very important did happen in the year 30 AD. The crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. So you see, right when the timeline expired, right when that law expired that kept them from coming back in covenant as illegitimate children, that's when Yeshua was crucified and resurrected. See, you might put it like this if you were writing Galatians, but when the fullness of time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, so that he might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. And Ephesians says this, just as he chose us in him before the foundations of the world. Side note, predestination is not what Calvin thought it was. Israel was predestined to go astray. They were the elect, chosen to be brought back into the covenant with God, to fulfill his plan. But just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we would be holy and blameless before him, in love, he predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ himself, according to the kind intention of his will. So you see, his timeline is perfect, that he came in the fullness of time right when that law had stopped keeping them from coming back in covenant with him. It's amazing. Not only that, you see why it was prophetic when Jacob adopted the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. And Scripture mentioned that because that was God's plan to cast them out and then adopt them back into the family.